All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to OTF Connects with Derek Schellenberg. We're going to learn about some online tech tools for teaching and learning. My name is Colin Jago, and I work with OTF part-time, but I'm a full-time teacher with Kawartha Pine Ridge, and I live in Brighton, Ontario. So just to sort of zip us through, we did this prior to starting the recording, and just to get an idea of where people are all over Ontario here tonight. So welcome again, thanks for joining us, and if anybody has any issues or problems, send me a message, post it in the chat, and I'll try and help as best I can. And in the meantime, we're going to go to the next slide, pass it on to Derek, and I'll let you lead it from there. Derek, you're in charge. Whatever you need me to do, you just let me know, and I will help you out, my friend.
Thanks a lot, Colin. Welcome, everybody. I hope that we're going to have a good evening tonight in terms of the next 90 minutes or so. And at the end, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. We're also going to make sure that at the end of this, we share the Google Slides version of this slide deck so you guys can access it, because there's going to be a lot of tools. And I think what we have to just be comfortable with is I'm going to give you a little taste of 8, 9, 10 tools. And with the ones that you sort of want to use or go deeper with, you know, you're going to have to do some additional learning beyond what I can teach you here, okay? So in terms of moving to the next slide here, what I'd like to do is get a sense of where we are, what kind of tools that we use. So the first tool we're going to actually use is Google Form. And what I've done is I've placed this link, bit.ly, /OTF tools in the chat box. So you can click on it and it'll take you to a Google form. It's just a couple of simple questions. Essentially what I'm asking for is what tech tools do you currently use? And then we're going to share that information. So I'll give you a couple seconds and I'm going to click on it myself and take you to what that Google form would look like. So in the chat box, you can see Derek Schellenberg 2, my second version of myself on a different computer, has placed the link. So if you want to just grab that link and take a couple minutes, hopefully in 1 or 2 minutes, you can post your responses. So I'm just going to go to the Google form, hopefully like you're doing. And then we'll be able to see what you're seeing as well. So this will be a challenge for people who are on a phone or on a tablet. The other thing to keep in mind is that at the end, I'll share the spreadsheet that actually collects all the data, so you'll be able to see that as well. The application sharing is a little slow here.
Yeah, I wonder what's going on there. You selected your browser, have you, like you did before?
Yeah, so it hasn't even let me got to that slide where it gives you that option. We're just scrolling here through the, let me try it again.
Huh.
Not sure if it's just the amount of people or it's probably specific to my machine.
I don't know. Try it now. Try it again. I just found something.
Oh, there we go.
We somehow, either between you and me, we turned off your permission to share applications.
I probably don't deserve that permission. So here's the...
We're off to a good start. All right, there we go.
It's all good. So here's the Google form that hopefully everybody went to. So it's just asking a couple simple questions. You'll notice it's anonymous. Nowhere do I ask for your name. So I'm going to select what I am, which is a secondary teacher. And daily tools that I use, I'm going to just put Google Apps as one of the tools that I use. and then tool that I use for a specific purpose. I'm just going to put one. You can put as many as you want, and then I'm going to click Submit. So this is one tool that I will go into sort of detail later. It's called a Google Form. It's great for surveys. It's great for polls. It now has a quiz feature in terms of automated responses. So currently, amongst our group of participants tonight, we have 16. So we have 11 elementary. It's no surprise. The elementary always seem to be far more than the secondary in the webinars, at least that I've done. And then we have this nebulous 3 other people. And then we have a list of tools, which is great. And then we have the difference between daily or frequent tools, and then tools you use for a specific purpose. And we can see our little number of daily responses. So the nice thing about Google Form is it automatically creates these bar graphs. I didn't have to do anything. It's part of the tool. So I'm going to go back to our slideshow here, and I'm going to move on to the next slide. So just a little bit of information about myself.
Derek, you want me to go back to
I teach in York Region District School. That's okay. We'll stay in here for now, if that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I've got another computer so I can see. Yeah.
Okay.
So currently I teach in the York Region District School Board. I'm up in Newmarket. I live in Aurora. I'm at a BYOD blended learning high school, which means that every kid, we've got about 1,200, they all bring their own computers, which they bring from home to the school, and that presents different affordances and challenges. And we're back. Okay. All right, seem to be back, so that's fine. So anyways, that's just a little bit of information about me, and then again, at the end, if you want to contact me via Twitter or email, my information's there, and we will make sure we give this slideshow to you guys so you can access the Google version of it. So one thing that I want to sort of put up front, and I think it's really important for you to consider, is that in every board, they have different tools which the board has said, yes, the teachers are okay with using, and no, the teachers are not okay with using. So we recently shared this. When we do any presentations in York Region, we have to share this slide with people. And so on the left, we have a sort of a small group. They're useful. They're a lot of the tools that I use almost every day, specifically Google Apps and Google Classroom. And then on the right, we have a lot of these fun tools. And I think I can guess, but I'm going to ask you guys, in the tools on the right, which would be the one you think that people use the most? Which one have you heard of, or which one do you think is sort of most used? If you want to sort of type your response in the chat box. So we see Twitter, we got a couple of Kahoots, we got TED-Ed, which is an amazing tool, Kahoot or Twitter, Kahoot. Okay, so we use Twitter as well. Fantastic. And we have some other ones that aren't even in this list, which is great. Haiku Deck, very nice. Okay, so here's the thing. In terms of these tools on the right, our board doesn't own them. It doesn't have licensing with them. So you have to be very, very careful in terms of how you use them. What we are told is that every single one of these tools, if I'm going to use it with my class, I need to get a permission form home. I need to get a permission form home, not a blanket permission form that covers 15 tools, but I need to have one for each tool that I use. Communication has to happen both with my parents and also my administrators. HyperDock's perfect. That's going to be great for tonight, Sabina. So even something like Kahoot, what you need to be careful is it collects the data. So one way, a simple way to protect yourself is if you still want to know which student is doing something, you could have them use their first names, use their initials. What you don't want is to have them use their full name, because that data is now in Kahoot. Kahoot has access to it because they give you the option afterwards to create a spreadsheet, etc. So just be very careful in terms of how you use the tools. I use them all in terms of the green ones and the red ones, but you need to protect yourself. So, moving on, same information, need to get parent or guardian permission, need to communicate with the school's administration. This is basically an overview of tonight, okay? What I'm going to try to do is on the right-hand side, we have a number of different, not tools, but types of tools. And for each one, there might be 3, 4, 5, 6 that are obvious ones that are lots of different teachers are using. I'm probably going to talk about maybe 1 or 2 from each little group. I may not be able to get through all of them, but that's what the attempt is going to be. My hope is that you'll be able to select some of them to use. You're probably already using some, and that's totally fine. And maybe you'll learn about a different feature that's new to a particular tool that you've used. I find every couple of months when I go back to these tools, they've added a new feature. Makes it a little bit more functional, a little bit more helpful. So I'm always learning in terms of how to use them. So the other thing I want you to think about is which tools are going to be your daily go-to frequent use, and which tools are going to be your specific targeted, I use it for one assignment for one particular class. So for me, on the left, we've got tools that I no longer use very often. And then in the middle, we have daily tools. Twitter I only use professionally. Every day I sort of tweet out the agenda in terms of what happened that day, so parents that followed my Twitter account will know what the lesson was. But these are the daily ones and these are the specialty ones. I'm not saying on the left don't use them. Moodle's great, but I've moved to Google Classroom. Turnitin is fantastic in terms of checking students' work. It checks for originality, plagiarism. It gets everything available online. And sadly, Bitstrips no longer exists. They sent me a bunch of links so I could download the stuff that I'd made before. Very sad. Okay, so the first thing, really quickly, that I'm going to talk about is the idea of creating a word cloud. In terms of what it is, it's a bunch of text that can come from any document. So this is actually from an assignment that my grade 9 academic English class is doing, where they have to enact a play, a scene from a play, and they have to do a seminar all in one full 75-minute period. So in groups of 5 or 6 people, 5 days, 5 acts, that sort of thing. So I took all the different words from that document and placed them in this. This is the symbol for my particular school. So in terms of typical word clouds, we have Wordle and Word It Out. And then if you want to create an actual shape, we have these two at the top left and top right, Tagzito and Tagul. And if you tell me a different pronunciation for the top right one, I will accept it. So this one was used with Tagul, the one at the top right, and I'll just show you briefly how to use that. So I'm hoping that I have sharing privileges. We'll see.
I didn't change it again, so
yeah.
I'm seeing your Chrome now with your Google slide deck.
You're seeing my Chrome. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting. Why is it so slow? Okay, so we can see it now. So what I would do is, for example, you guys did all your responses for the Google form that we did, and if I want to view them, I can go to the spreadsheet where they're all here in terms of what everybody typed, and you'll be able to see this later, and then I just copy all of this. And right click, and I'm going to copy it. And then I need to go to Tagul, which is right here. And basically what it allows me to do is I can import words. So I would use this sort of as a reflection sort of task at the end of a unit or at the end of a lesson. This is all the feedback that we got from different people that participated in the little survey. And then what I would do is I would go import words. There they all are. And it gives me the option to change things in terms of the shapes. So I can choose the shape that it's going to be. There's some interesting ones. I don't think those are too scary for me, so I'm going to keep going. Let's see, we'll just go with something simple. And then what you do is you go over to the right and you click Visualize, and you can play with the colors and the font and the text and all that sort of thing. And suddenly we have all the words that you guys provided in your responses to the Google form. Now what I need to do next is download it to my computer. So I'm just going to choose this simple download image. Take a second, and there it is. And I go back to my slideshow, go down to this little blank slide here, and I can paste everybody's responses in, and then of course I need to resize it a little bit. So it's pretty simple. It's not a tool that you're going to use where students interact with it necessarily, but it can sort of sum up the learning that was done and capture it digitally. So it's a very simple tool. It's a Wordcloud. And like I said, in terms of the top one, Taggle and Tagxedo, they allow you to pick the shapes, whereas Wordle would be just more of a standard cloud. So now we're going to move on to the second class of tools. Very simple. And some of you guys, I know you're probably all in sort of different worlds in terms of access to technology and also what the students are using in terms of, do they have computers, do you have an online home, do you have Google Classroom, that sort of thing. So one thing that can make life a little bit easier is when we take these long links, like the one that I have up here for this actual slideshow, and then we just use a URL shortener. And the URL shortener makes it very small and allows me to, I can handwrite it on my whiteboard or my chalkboard, or I can paste it in a document. It's very easy for kids to access it. So I've taken this same slideshow link and created 3 different ones using these 3 URL shorteners. So one is goo.go, and one's tinyURL, and the other one's bit.ly. Bit.ly might be, if you're going to use this, the way to go, because it allows you to actually tailor your link, and you can actually create a word. So if I take this link here at the top and I copy it, and I go to bit.ly with the 500 little windows that I have open, what I can do is I can click in the top right, create a link, keeping in mind that every tool that I'm showing you is 100% free, although a lot of the tools will have some upgrade feature that they want you to pay for. And then it's given me a shortened URL, so I can now share this with other people, but I can also tailor it. So I can just type in OTF slide deck, and as long as it's not been taken by me or somebody else, let's find out. Yep, so it's not been used before, so now that's my little link. And it's nice when it's actually a word, because then it's easy to A, write it down, and B, if you're a teacher and you're presenting to them, it's easy for them to type it in their computer. If you can't actually give them the link electronically, this is something easy to do. Another one which you might find useful is, again, goo.go, and I paste my link in here, and then I shorten the URL, and I just copy it here. Copy, shorten URL, and away we go. So these are very simple tools. If you don't have an online home like Google Classroom, then you might be using this, writing it up on the board, and then students can access it with whatever device they have. So those are the first 2. Now we're going to move to things that are a little bit, I wouldn't say trickier, but maybe a little bit more useful in terms of working with students. So a lot of you guys mentioned Padlet, which we'll take a look at. Answergarden's relatively new, and I think a lot of people, today's meet has been around for a while, so I'm sure a lot of people have used that. The way Answergarden works is really simple. Let me just get rid of this so it's fresh. You don't need to make an account. So that's great. Doesn't take me any time to use it. I click on the plus symbol, and now it asks me what question that I want. So it says what I've typed in already. What tech tools had the biggest impact on your teaching? So I'm going to leave that for now. I can scroll down. If I want people to have multiple opportunities to answer, then I can put it in classroom mode so my students can answer it as many times as possible. If you want sentence answers, you're probably going to want to pick 40. That's the number of characters. For me, I only want you to tell me one tool, so 20 is probably going to be sufficient. And then we can have an admin password and an email and all these sorts of things. So it's a very simple tool. So I'm going to click Create here. And now it's ready. Now, if I want to share this with you guys so you can use it, because I want you to see what it looks like when responses start coming in, I'm just going to actually, hold on. Let's see. Colin?
Yes, sir.
Not sure. Yeah. Can you just take that link and throw it in the chat box?
I can't paste it. I can't paste it from where you've got it, so just hang on.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
I'll just type it in. No problem. Okay.
391194.
I think you're going to
I think that's it. I hope I typed it right.
Yeah.
If I didn't type it right.
Didn't work?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
I've got it.
Right. So could I get you guys to go there, and not so much for the actual response, but I want you to see what it looks like as the responses accumulate. So click on it, come up with the tool that you think has changed your teaching, has had the biggest impact on your teaching, and then we'll take a look what it actually does as it accumulates answers. So I'm just going to start typing things, and hopefully more than one person is going to respond. There we go. So you can see what's already happening for people who have chosen Google Classroom. Some people have no spaces. Some people have multiple classrooms. So what it's doing is aggregating the responses. Okay, so this is a really quick and easy tool. It took me seconds to set it up. So you want to gather information from your students really quickly. This is the way to go. Now, can anybody tell me what the downside or what one of the downsides is of this tool? Thinking about your class actually using it. Exactly, Kara Ann. Okay, so students can put anything. Crystal says, don't know who said what. Exactly. So the positive and the negative at the same time is it's anonymous. Okay, so yes, that students can feel safe. They can look at somebody else's response and put something. Even if they can't think of something, they can take somebody else's idea. The negative is if something goes up there that you don't like, you have no idea who put it there. So this is not a tool that I would use on day one. After your students got used to you and you got used to them, then I would attempt to use this tool. And the same applies for Padlet. Okay, Padlet for a lot of things is anonymous, so it's just something to consider. So I'm just going to actually move to Padlet right now. I know a lot of you have used it. I love it. Let's see if it'll let me in with one of my accounts. Sure, you can have offline access. Okay, so in terms of a recent Padlet, 7 days ago for my English department, is we're engaged in a project, and it's focusing on reading strategies. So every teacher that was involved in the project went online, found different resources, found videos, found slideshows, found images, all these sorts of things, and pasted them. One thing I love now, which I think is relatively recent, is there's a comment feature. So you can actually, as you can see here, this is an awesome slide deck, Christina, thanks for sharing it. You can actually use it as a bit of a dialoguing tool as well, where students respond to each other. It has, unless students are logged in, it has that same anonymity challenge. So again, you have to train your students first in terms of what's acceptable, because you're not going to know if somebody posts something that is not okay. Yep, it does have a moderator function, absolutely. So then you would have to be checking each post and okaying them before they were visible, but you can definitely do that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in terms of Padlet because I think A, it's an easy tool to figure out on your own, and B, I know a lot of people have already used it. So I'm just going to say goodbye to Padlet there, and goodbye to Answergarden. So in terms of my little evaluation, for Padlet, easy to set up, it's anonymous, the background images I love, and if you don't like the ones they have, and I don't know why you wouldn't, because they're amazing, you can actually find your own images and put them on there. And then not necessarily a con, I think it's both a pro and a con, it can be an anonymous tool. And the same thing applies for Answergarden. I don't think Answergarden is visually as appealing as Padlet. It also only allows text, whereas Padlet will allow you to put images, will allow you to put videos, will allow you to put links. So I think Padlet probably gives you a lot more functionality. Answergarden is great, though, in terms of aggregating. If people are choosing, what's my favorite sport or what's my favorite subject in school, it's very fast. Okay, so next, what we're going to do, I'm just reading this response. Good for brainstorming. It's sad that we have such great, useful tools, but no computers to use them. Yes. Hopefully, I think at some schools they have computer labs or mobile carts. I know sometimes it's tough to book them, but it is a challenge. I know at some of the schools in our board, teachers, what they did is said, students can bring in devices, whether it's a mobile device or a laptop or whatever, but not everybody has one of those. So in terms of slide decks, we have a couple different options here. Keynote, I think, is something that you have to pay for, but the rest of them are free. So Haiku Deck, Prezi, Adobe Spark, which used to be Adobe Slate, and we'll take a look at what it looks like, and Google Slides, which looks like PowerPoint. Maybe it doesn't have all the functionality of PowerPoint, but it has some things that PowerPoint could never do, which is amazing. And then Slides Carnival. And the reason why I put a little asterisk beside it is it's not a unique tool in terms of what it offers, but what it does offer is templates. So we'll just take a look at it first, and then maybe we'll take a look at Adobe Spark, because I'm guessing less people have used those tools. So if I just look at Slides Carnival, what it does is, if you can use Google Slides, it provides many, many templates. So if we look down at these different templates, so for Halloween, you can guess which one that I picked to use with my kids. So I would click on it, and it just takes a second to load. And usually with most of the templates, I want to scroll through them a little bit first. This one I just knew because there's only 2 that are connected to Halloween that I was going to use it. Looks fine. And then what I do is I click Use this presentation template. And I think you'll see, in terms of conferences, PD sessions, that sort of thing, everybody is using Slides Carnival's templates right now. And I just go to File, and I can either move this template to my Drive, or I can make a copy that will appear in my Google Drive. Now, I know some of you might be in a board that doesn't endorse Google, that makes me sad inside. But that doesn't prevent you from actually using it with your own account. It just prevents you from using it in terms of your students having an account. But my hope is that most boards are making this at least an option. Okay, so this is Slides Carnival. It's pretty simple. I think you'll find the quality of the templates a lot better than what Google Slides
Derek,
offers. Okay.
Just a question,
Yeah.
Does that require you to sign in with a Google account, or does it just automatically sort of want to open up Google Slides when you click that download? How does that work, just so people know?
Right. So this is the one that I used for tonight's slideshow. And so what I have to be before I can grab this is I have to be in one of my accounts. Now I have two. I have one within York Region, and I also have my own personal Google account, and I found that the one within York Region won't work. So it's a little bit of a workaround, but what I have to do is use my personal account. So when I click Use this presentation template, in the top right you can see my personal Gmail, echomountain@gmail.com, and then what I'll do is I'll actually share it with myself.
Right.
So I'll go share, and I'll type in my own address.
Sure.
There it is. And then I send it to myself. And sometimes it even takes me, I have to do it twice sometimes.
Right.
And you can see there's always millions of people that are grabbing these things. But it's, in terms of like high quality templates, they're amazing.
Okay.
And they give you about 30 basic slides, and you can just pick and choose which ones you're going to use for your presentation. So. Yeah.
Okay, so I see. So basically, just so everybody's clear, Slides Carnival seems to have like their own Google account. You open it up, and then you have to share it or send it to your own personal Google account to make it work for you. Then. Okay. Cool.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah. Does that bell indicate a question, or Isabel saying, "Will we get a copy of this presentation for review?" Absolutely. We'll make sure that you can have this Google slideshow at the end, and you can make a copy of it and then keep forever. Somebody else asked, how do you access Slides Carnival? You just go to Google and type in Slides Carnival, and it will pop up. But I've already got all the links in the document as well. So once you get in at the bottom here, you can see all the links that you'll be able to access. So the next one I'm going to show you is called Adobe Spark. And it's not really like any other tool. It could be used for presentations. It could be used for creating a page in terms of documenting that sort of thing. Some people, instead of calling it, and this is silly to me, but instead of calling it a slide deck, call it a glide deck. So we'll just see how it works. So the pictures are amazing. I love them. So it just literally slides down, and then we have different types of images. I know it takes a couple seconds to load on your computer. I'm trying to go slowly. And so the text appears, and then we've got different images, and you can build actual links right into the document as well. So this is, again, me talking about tech tools when I made this one. So it's quite a different tool. It looks different from Prezi. It looks different from your typical PowerPoint slide presentations like Google Slides. And it's called Adobe Spark. So there's one example of it. I'll show you a second example in just a second. And I think I need to appreciate myself there. So there I go. And so, sorry, if I go to, let's see if this is it. Yes, it's the second one here. So this is not an advertisement for the TLLP project, but for those of you who've never heard of this, this is the best professional development ever, but this was built with Adobe Spark as well. So actually the deadline for applying is next week, and it's amazing in terms of developing your own professional development. It's run by the Ministry of Education. So this is Adobe Spark And here you can actually build in the links to other resources. So this is their website. This is Teach Ontario, which is another great place that you should definitely visit. And then we have some key messages about the project. So this is another example of Adobe Spark. So you could use it for presentations. Again, it doesn't function in terms of clicking on from one slide to the next, but I think it is a cool tool that you can use with your students. I think your students will love it. The quality of the pictures is fantastic. So I'm just going to close 3 of the 700 windows I have open. Okay, so those are a couple options. Now, question for you guys, and you can give me a check mark or an X. How many people would like me to show them how Haiku Deck works? Check mark would be yes, never heard of it, show us how it works. X would be, that's enough slide decks, Derek, let's move on. Oh, Karen's, we got 3 people that are in the X, and everybody else seems to be show us how it works. So we will just take a quick look. And again, this tool is a free tool, Haiku Deck. They did change the rules a little bit in terms of how it works. Excuse my squeaky chair. So you go to www.haikudeck.com, and I'll just go to the decks that I've already made. And if I just pick one, what is a strength and a weakness of this tool? The strength is definitely the quality of the pictures. Again, they're fantastic. And it also is very intentionally limiting as to how much text you can put on a slide. So for grade 9s, when they first come to our school, the first assignment we do is in Haiku Deck, because we want them to get away from putting paragraphs on slideshows. So this actually prevents them. It only allows you to put a title and another line, maybe 3 lines of text. That's it. So if you're planning on doing something that's more complex, that has multiple links in it, when I put an image on this, the image automatically takes the full size of the slide. So again, there are definitely strengths and weaknesses of the tool. This is an explanation of Pekakucha, which is a specific type of presentation, and I'm sure someone could correct me again in terms of the pronunciation. If I just go in back to my slides, and I'll attempt to edit one to show you what it looks like when you actually are making it. I believe now in their free version you can make 3 in terms of 3 free ones per account. So if you, once you've made more than 3, you need to make another account. Now I made my account long before they sort of brought this new rule in, so I've probably got 10, but I can't make any more with this specific account. So it's very basic in terms of what features it has. I hope you're enjoying the piano in the background. So these are the themes that we have up here that I can choose for my presentation. So it impacts obviously the font. If I want to add a slide, I just hit this plus symbol down here, and I can choose which type of slide I want. So this first one in the top left might be to begin a presentation. So if I typed in Web Tools, then I would go to, I can go up and down with these options on the left. And so now it's got this interesting way of actually searching in terms of images. So it gives me 3 options based on the text that I have in the slide. So I can go with Web, I can go with Tools, or I can go with Web Tools. So let's pick Tools. And it automatically creates this list. And I'll just choose one. And there we go. So there's a little slide there. The nice thing about Haiku Deck is that it allows me to actually take the slideshow and I can embed it into websites. Okay, so it'll actually fully function within a website, which is actually pretty cool. And if I want to change the location of the words, I can't drag them. I have to choose one of these options. So I can put the words up, I can put the words down, you can't see them, but that's how it looks. So it's actually very limiting in terms of what it allows, but I think it's a great starting place for students in terms of, okay guys, we're going to emphasize images, we're going to have minimal text, the expectation is you're going to have to explain everything. The pictures look fantastic, they're all high quality images. So it's definitely an option. It doesn't have, 1/10 of the features of Google Slides, but it's very cool in terms of the quality of the slideshow. Okay, so I'm going to move on from Haiku Deck. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a taste for it. Let's say goodbye to Slides Carnival as well. So in terms of the strengths of Haiku Deck, high quality images, it's got this weird search engine in terms of how it works. It chooses words from your actual slide and it uses them to generate possibilities. And you can focus on images, not text, which I think is a real important thing for students to focus on. Now, you do need an account. You could theoretically create 20 accounts or whatever for all your students, or you need permission if your students are going to create that account. Students have the ability to actually choose their own images. So I've had students upload their own images there. Again, you want communication with parents. A limited number of decks, so it's currently 3. And then I think I put an asterisk here because I don't think it's a weakness, but some people might. Limited text per slide. Okay, so that is Haiku Deck. So the next tool that we're going to talk about, and I know we've got a lot of elementary teachers here, and I use this a lot in high school, but I think this is ideal for elementary. I have 2 kids who are both in elementary school. They love Storybird. They've been using it for years. I'm not going to say the quality of their stories is necessarily always that good or that I'd want to share it, but this is basically what Storybird looks like. I'll go to the site in a second. And the way it works is you go on there and there are artists who've put 20, 40, 60, 80 pictures of their work. And so it's organized by artist and it's actually random. So if you find an artist that you love that you want to use multiple times, you need to record somewhere that artist's name because it'll be a little bit challenging to find them again if you don't know their name. When you're actually ready to create something, it gives you 3 options. So there's poem, there's picture book, and there's long form book, which is like a novel. So this is sort of the middle ground. This is the picture book. And essentially it looks like a slideshow. So at the bottom, we've got the 6 slides, including the cover, that have been made so far. And then we've got images on the left and images on the right. So I'll show you how to use it in just a second. I love this tool. What I would say is a couple of things to keep in mind. One, once your students choose an artist, they can't choose 5 pictures from one artist and 3 from another. Once they've chosen an artist, they're committed to writing their story with that artist. The other thing is this is not a tool for write the story first and then find the right pictures. This is find the artist, find the pictures, and then write the story. So you need to think carefully about how am I going to organize my task. If you had students actually write their picture ahead of time, or sorry, write their story ahead of time, they would be very frustrated when they got to this tool. So if I go to Storybird here, you can see some of the Storybirds that I've created. And what I'll do is we'll create a new one. So I'll just go up to the top. And what another feature of Storybird, which I love, is you can actually create class accounts. They can be anonymous. They don't need to have people's names. But I can create 30 accounts, and it takes me about 2 seconds to do it. So I go to create if I'm ready to create an actual Storybird. and I can start scrolling through the different works of art. And I look at them, and I've used some of them before, and I get to the bottom, and I can look at some more if I want. And this one with the skull, it looks really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to pick something here. Let's pick this one. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, after I look at this picture, is I can actually go down to where it says View All 82, and I can see all the art made by this specific person. So I love this person's art. It's fantastic, but I also know that all the images that they've made are random. So it's very difficult to create an actual story with this particular artist. So I would probably go back and I would choose a different artist, even though I love the work that she's done. So I'm going to pick this one in the top right, because I know that I can create a story with it. And I'm going to click Use This Art. And it gives me 3 options. So we've got long form book, which I'm not going to do, I never use. We've got picture book, and we've got poem. Now poem, you'll either love it or you'll hate it. The way poem works, I'll just show you, is it takes one picture from that artist and it randomly generates a bunch of words. And then the challenge, because you can't type, the challenge is you trying to sequence the words to connect in some way, possibly, to this picture. And I'm not really attempting to make sense here, so please don't judge me. And if I'm not happy with the words, I can go down to this bottom right and I can click Reset, and I can either reset the artwork, which I'll do, gives me a different picture from the same artist, or I can reset the words.
Julie's asking, is it only in English, or can you change languages in Storybird?
I think it is only in English. If you can prove me wrong, then go for it, but I've only seen it in English so far.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So this is the poem one. Now, I don't usually use this. What I prefer is the actual picture book. And again, this is what it looks like. And so the first thing we do is, if I'm in a class, whether it's grade 9, 10, 11, or 12, is they have an idea, oh, we have to make a 10-page story. So they quickly use the plus symbol, give themselves 10 pages. And then what they do is they start choosing images. And if they just click on the image a little bit, it gets a little bigger. And if they attempt to drag it onto the page, there's different ways they can have the image show up on the page. So they quickly add their pictures. And then what would happen is, after they've got all their pictures there, is they would probably want to sequence them in terms of the story. So I would definitely suggest, if you were going to use this tool, and the kids do love using the tool, don't set them up by having them write the story first. And please warn them that they have to choose just one artist, because they'll say, oh, I need a picture of a knight, and there's not one here. Well, unfortunately, you can only draw on the ones that are here. So it's good when you choose an artist that actually has reoccurring characters in it. So I know that this one does. And now all I would do is I could drag them in terms of sequencing them. This one's going to go first. This one's going to go second. I need to add a cover, sort of an initial page, so I can go, okay, classic, and then I give my story a title, whatever. And then what you have to remember is this isn't like a Google tool. I need to save. So I save it, and then I save and exit. And you can make the story either private. If I'm going to go back to it, I'm going to put my story isn't finished yet, and that's how you use Storybird. It has a moderator. The moderator is independent. I think all my stories are fantastic and amazing, but it has occasionally told me, oh, Derek, you have to be careful with this particular story, and so then I'll look at the little feedback they give me. So I have gotten feedback from their moderator in terms of, I don't know what I've done to offend someone, but occasionally I get some advice on how to change the stories. And when you publish them, you can choose sort of what themes and also what age group is going to see it. So it can either be private or it can be public, and then it goes in the Storybird gallery. Can we print them? It's not easy to print them, okay? What will happen is, for me, when we finish these stories, and my class just finished one last week, we take the links for them and we post the links in Google Classroom, and then we read each other's stories and gave each other feedback. So it's going to ask you, when you finish your lovely story, it gives you this option at the bottom to buy. I can buy my Storybird. I can ask family or friends to buy it. Again, I never use the tool for that. I always use it digitally. But if you chose to buy it, then you could have the story printed. Okay, so definitely, it's not a tool that if you want to print it out at the end, yeah, it's not easy to do anyways. Okay, so that is Storybird. It's sort of in a class by itself in terms of a tool. There's nothing really like it. So I think it's got amazing artwork. It has those 3 form options, sort of the long form book, the picture book, which is what I use, and the poem, which is kind of bizarre in terms of it forcing you to use specific words. You can share the link. You can also embed it on your website, which is what I do with Google Sites. There's a moderator, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing. Keep in mind 1 artist per story, and what I already mentioned is if you want to create a hard copy, you have to pay for it. Okay. So, someone mentioned HyperDocs. Can I get a check mark or an X if you have heard of HyperDocs? So check mark if you've heard of it, and X if you have not. So far I can see 3 X's, 6 X's. Oh, 2 people have heard of it, Sabina and Kara Ann. Is it, oh, and Deanna? Can I get somebody who's heard of it to sort of maybe give us a little brief explanation in the chat box about what a HyperDock is?
Or feel free to use the mic, somebody.
Yeah, feel free to use the mic. I have used Google Docs only, okay. For a HyperDock, sure. Any other people want to chime in with an answer as to what a HyperDock is or why it's called a HyperDock? Nice, Deanna. A document that you can hyperlink to so that you can share them, where my students can share their documents. Okay, so those are some great answers. On the actual slides in the bottom left, I have a HyperDock is an online doc with hyperlinks to other resources. Yeah, it's interesting, Connie. So when the people who coined the term use it for Google Docs, myself personally, I think you can put a hyperlink in things beyond Google Docs. So I don't consider it as restrictive as that, but some people would say that the original definition is only Google Docs can be considered HyperDocs. Okay, so Sabina says allows the students to collaborate with each other. Now, one thing that I would say as well is that a HyperDock, if you set it up a certain way, in some ways functions like the flipped classroom, in that the flipped classroom is designed for students to interact with the video, the tutorial, there might be a quiz after, etc. A HyperDock could be one lesson where the students move through the document, completing certain tasks, and the teacher sort of acts initially to set things up, and then is able to walk around and sort of facilitate things. Okay, so we'll take a look at a couple examples. Some of them are from me, and some of them aren't. Okay, hold on 1 second. And in terms of the different options. So Google Docs is one that people typically use. ThingLink works well. The Adobe Spark, which I already showed you, that glide deck, will allow you to actually put in links, and so you could build a HyperDock with it. Google Docs is the obvious one, but what I really prefer is actually this symbol in the middle, which is Google Drawing, because it allows you to put an image on the whole slide, and it looks really cool in terms of what you make. So I'll show you a couple different examples of a HyperDock. They are not difficult to make. They're a cool idea. So this one is made by someone I follow on Twitter. I love their work. They're always sharing amazing resources. So basically what it could be is an opportunity for differentiation. So I'll just change the little U button here. That might be too small. Okay, maybe that's just right. So what you could do is at the end of a unit, at the end of the week, etc., you want students to demonstrate their knowledge. But instead of saying, okay guys, we're all going to use Haiku Deck, we're all going to use Google Slides, you give them an option of a number of different tools. They're going to choose one. In some cases here, you could actually create or find a little video tutorial that explains how to use that specific tool. They demonstrate their knowledge and understanding using the tool, and then they go in the middle here and they post their project. And the idea is, whether it's in a folder or a website or whatever, that other students can actually see that work. So this is one way to use a HyperDock that I think is really interesting. A second way, let me just click on the link. Hopefully it'll come up in a reasonable amount of time. This is created by 3 women online who are responsible for a book about how to create HyperDocs. And they've developed this sort of lesson plan in terms of how you would actually use the tool. So at the beginning, you might have something that attempts to hook them like we would in some of our lessons, and it could be a video. So that's the first thing they do. Now you could either view the video either whole group, or it could be in class if they have individual devices. Headphones would be nice, otherwise you're listening to them all at different places in the video. Or it can actually be a HyperDock flipped lesson where they're at home and they watch the video at home and then they move through the different phases of the lesson. Explore, explain, apply, share, reflect, and extend. So it's a very simple structure, but very useful in terms of creating a lesson, and maybe it allows the teacher to be mobile and work one-on-one with people as they're working through the HyperDock. This is created by the same people, and what they've done is they've taken a couple of the phases or stages in the hero's journey, and they've created a lesson plan again for HyperDocs where you start again with the hook. In this case, they're calling it the call to adventure. So it would almost be creating a sense of inquiry where students are going to inquire into a topic. They answer the unknown. Maybe you give them an inquiry question. Maybe they develop their own. They meet some opportunity to get feedback. It could be online conferencing, etc. It could be a video, and they slowly work through the phases again. So I'm entering a myth unit next week. Wouldn't surprise me if 1 or 2 of the lessons I use sort of this format for that particular structure. And I'll just show you one that I've created. It's really simple. I wouldn't say it even would take a whole lesson. And this is done using Google Drawings. So basically what happens, hopefully the images have loaded on your screen, is this is a value line. So across the middle here we have strongly agree, unsure, and strongly disagree. And what we do is we give them a statement, top right, countries like Canada should open their border to refugees. And ideally we pick a statement that's both timely and something that's going to engage them where we might have different opinions on it. So we've got a couple images, a little bit of description, refugee camps, refugees being transported by smugglers. You can see that boat looks very, very full. And students put their initial sort of position. I think that I'm you know, currently somewhere in the strongly agree section. Let's see if I can actually drag it. Come here. Yeah. So I put my initial position, and then the idea is I work through the different links. So what I want to do is I want to have them look through this news article first, and then reevaluate their position. Watch a video, reevaluate their position. So I'm trying to give them multiple perspectives, and what I'm hoping is that if they've got 1, 2, 3 numbers, that each of them are in a different place as they reevaluate, as they learn a little bit more, as they consider different people's opinions about this particular topic. And then what we would do is at the end of this, they would click on the Google form, much like what you guys did at the beginning of today's webinar, and they would explain how their position on this line evolved over time, depending on the evidence and the perspectives they were exposed to. So this is an example of a HyperDock, and basically what happens is, it didn't take me long. I created, I found 2 pictures, created the line, and then I found a newspaper article. This one's from the Toronto Sun, a video, TED Talk that I wanted them to watch. It's actually very sad. And then I created a Google form. And so in each case, what I do to create the HyperDock is I choose the text that I want to anchor it to, I highlight it, and then I look for this little symbol. So I think of it as like an infinity symbol or a link, and I click on it, and then I paste my link to the news article, the TED Talk, or the Google form right here, and then once I've got something in there, it'll let me click the word apply, and suddenly that link is now live, and I can start my lesson. So this wouldn't take necessarily the whole 75 minutes, but it might take about half the class, depending on the length of the video and how many questions I have.
Yeah, no, Derek, no, I'm interrupting you on Jen's behalf. She just had a question. She just, if you see here, she just says she's confused about the hyperlinks. Is it links to other things? Are they all active on the page that you're showing? Just kind of how does the linking thing all work? Right. So what you want to do in this case is, first of all, think about what process you want to take the kids through. Now, keep in mind that I've got 3 links here. Nothing prevents them from going directly to the Google form, okay? But what I do is I found a news article that was about refugees, and it might have been pro or it might have been con in terms of having more refugees come into Canada. And what I did was I grabbed that link and then I pasted it here. So this is the link. I can change it if I want to grab a Toronto Star link. So I just go change, and then I paste the link in there. So what happens is students click on it, and it will take them away from this document, and it will take them to the resource. So I'll just click on the TED Talk link, and we'll just see what happens. Now, probably what would normally happen for a video, if it was this long, which is almost 20 minutes, is we would watch it as a whole class. But with a smaller video, we would have students watch it individually. But yeah, the idea is that there's 3 live links, and the students work through the process at their own pace. So does that answer the question? Well, we'll ask Jen. She's got it. It's funny. I'm going to sort of ask a second question, because it seems to me it's like a really simple way to make a web page, right? Like I think back 20 years ago when I was playing with making web pages and coding HTML and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're putting in links and you're building sort of activities, and it's the same idea. But now with the tools we've got, you can do it really, really simply in what's essentially a doc, but you've basically created a web page that links out to all of these other things. Is that sort of a way to think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the nice thing is I don't need to know anything with regards to coding to create this. I just go, for example, if I want to go to my, sorry, I've got multiple computers here. If I wanted to grab this link here, I would just copy it. And then I would go back to my document and say, oh yeah, I want them to learn about my opinions on technology first. So I would just paste in the link, and that could be the first resource that they work through. So it is really simple in terms of setting it up. I think the it just helps in terms of your pedagogy. So it makes the document a lot more interesting that they work through. And I think, as I said before, it kind of adopts some of the aspects of the flipped classroom in that the teacher steps away, students can interact with the material. But I like your analogy to the website.
Yeah, and just you don't have to know web coding, you don't have to build a website, but it's a way of putting a bunch of, like I said, hypertext and links to other things in a very simple thing like a doc, and you just share that one doc. So it's like almost like a meta web, which is pretty cool to think about it. Right. Anyway, so thanks for that.
No problem. So this is an example of a HyperDock, and as I said before, these are different tools on the right-hand side that'll let you use them. Google Docs, if you're going to be hardcore in terms of your defining of HyperDock, then Google Docs is the way to go. And for me personally, I like Google Drawing because I can use the actual whole image to cover the whole document. And Google Docs is actually sort of infinite in terms of if you keep hitting enter, it'll go on forever, whereas a Google Drawing is just one finite page, and so I can design everything on one page. So for me, that's what I prefer to do, but feel free to experiment. So in terms of the pros and cons with using Google Docs for this, it's pretty easy to add links and images, okay? They've got a new tool, relatively new, which is voice typing. So I can actually activate my microphone. It's not perfect, but it'll turn speech into text. You have to say period and question mark, but it's kind of cool. It has a research feature, and then two of the best features of almost all of the Google apps are commenting and revision history. Very useful, use them all the time. So my students, for example, today, they're in a slideshow much like this, and as the presentation is happening, all 30 students are in it, and they're giving feedback to each other during the actual seminar. So you can see students, as the groups finish, they immediately scroll through all the feedback they received from each other and also from myself. So perfect in terms of timely feedback. Doesn't have all the features of Word. Unfortunately, not all boards allow Google App tools, so those are bits of downside for the use of Google Docs. Okay, so the next class of tool, I see we're at 836 here, is quiz surveys or polling tools. And we've got a number of different options. I'm pretty much Google biased, but Google Form is one. So we have SurveyMonkey, Poll Everywhere, TED Ed Lessons, and then we have Edpuzzle, and Edpuzzle is relatively new. One thing is if you're going or contemplating experimenting with the flipped classroom, then Google Form, TED Ed, and Edpuzzle will actually allow you to use videos with your questions. So I think that can be very powerful in terms of actually embedding them. So we'll take a look at one or two of these tools and see what we've got here. So let's go to TED Ed first. Again, it's free. I created an account. You don't have to necessarily, but if I scroll down here, I can click on this arrow and it'll say View All TED Ed Lessons. And on the left-hand side, we've got different topics. So I am a little biased towards literature and language. So you can pick a different lesson. Now, with a lot of these lessons, what they've done is a teacher has created a lesson, shared it with TED, and TED has actually animated the lesson into these short videos, which I think are perfect in terms of teaching length. So a lot of them are somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 minutes. So if I click on this, which connects to our grade 10 English course at my school, we've got the video here. You'll notice that it's from YouTube. The nice thing is you can create your own lessons using this structure, and so you can use any video on YouTube to create your lesson. So it has a little bit of a descriptor up here at the top, and then we've got the actual video, and we've got 4 or 5 different things that students can work through. So the assumption is they watch the video first, and then it has the ability to ask two different types of questions. So you can go with multiple choice, which is what this is, and you can also ask open-ended questions, which is what this is, and we want to save our answer. Now, for this tool, probably I would have students create an account. So again, I would need parent permission, or I would create accounts for my students. Especially if I was going to use this tool more than once, I would create an account for each of them. So we've got watch, which is the video, think, which is the questions. Dig deeper allows for those hyperlinks, if you want to create hyperlinks. As far as I'm concerned, this could be one lesson, or you could build a whole unit in terms of this, and it could be sort of the anchor that starts the unit. And then at the end, we have the ability to engage in discussions where students can respond to each other. What I love about this tool is there's tons of lessons that are already made and you don't have to change anything. But they used to call it flipping the lesson. Now they call it customizing. I can click on this and I can change all aspects of that lesson. So I click customize, and then I can add questions, I can change questions, etc. So if I go up here to my little icon for myself, these are different things that I've played with. So some of them, this here is not, I don't think this is a TED Ed lesson, but it's Breakout EDU. So I'm creating a lesson to explain people how to use Breakout EDU. This is a screencast that I made. I don't think it's that much fun for us, but it's for grade 12's Theories of Literary Criticism. And let's see, I'll just click on one. So basically, this person, Matthew Winkler, is the teacher responsible for creating the initial lesson. They animated it into video form, and then I took the questions, some of which they created, and some of which are tailored to my specific class. So these are questions in terms of things that we learned from the video and things we're learning during the myth unit. And then we can look at different resources, and you can delete these and add your own. And then we can engage in discussion. And so in this case, we were actually reading A Long Way Gone at that time, which is about child soldiers, and students can discuss some aspects of it. So this is a really powerful tool. I don't think it's very difficult to use in terms of editing the lessons, but you can create a lesson from scratch, and you can use any video from YouTube to create your lesson. So I think it's a great option.
Yeah, Derek?
Yeah.
Isabel just asked about parent permission for TED Ed. I'm going to assume it probably varies board by board, but maybe you could just speak about that with this one.
Yeah. So if I wanted students to use this tool and I wanted them to create their own account at York Region, what I would do is I would go to the York Region website, and they have a permission form, which I would download, and I would fill in the specific tool. I would let my principal know. I would let my department head know, which is me, and then I would make a copy for each kid, and they would have to take them home, and they could not use the tool until they had brought back the permission form, obviously signing off. And for the students, if there's 3 to 5 of them, they would have to have some sort of alternative if they were either A, not given permission, or B, didn't bring the form back. Now, one thing I could do with things like Storybird and this is if I'm using it, I have a class of 8 students, for example, 11-12 split in one of my classes, I would just make 8 accounts for them. No student personal information goes in. I do not put the student's full name in. I might have just their first name only, and then I have no problems in terms of using the tool. So I think it's just, that's a really good question. It used to be that TED Ed lessons you could actually just use anonymously, but then you don't know what student is actually putting in the information. So how do you check for understanding? So it's a really powerful tool, but you do want to get identification of which kid did which response. So I would either A, get parental permission, or B, I would make the accounts myself. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so TED-Ed, amazing. Now, another tool that I think is also easy to use, it's something that I use almost every day, is Google Form. The nice thing about it is even if your board is not a Google board, you can still use this tool because the students don't have to create the Google form. You just have to create it, and then the students can interact with the tool if they have technology. If they don't have technology, they can't interact with the tool. So what you can do with Google Form is you can do surveys, you can do polls. It now has a quiz feature, which is fantastic, and it will self-mark specific types of questions, which I love. It also has a tool called data validation, which basically means that they can't go to the next part of the quiz until they've answered the last part correctly. So for example, if we're doing puzzles and they have to solve them, they can't move to puzzle 2 until they've solved puzzle 1. So in this case here, if I just go to the actual live Google form, anything with the asterisk means that it's mandatory. So I can't click next until I've actually filled something in. Now, nothing prevents your student from saying, yes, my name is whatever, X2. So that's fine. So then they go to the next tool, or sorry, the next question, the next section. And in this case, it's who was the playwright that wrote the play that we will study. So this is at the beginning of the unit. So they guess that this is Marlowe. And you can put in a little hint text if you want. I don't think I have the right answer somehow. So I'm going to just go back and I can change it. And then it'll allow me to keep going. So we use it for puzzles. We use it for tickets out the door, exit cards, all those sorts of things. It's a pretty easy tool to use. Now, in terms of the quiz feature, let me just show you how that works with the second one that I have. And again, in my particular school, or sorry, department, while we give quizzes, we don't count them as part of their mark. We would consider them formative. So what happens is, again, I always start a survey with what's your name. We're a Google board, so I can automatically collect their student number, but I have not memorized all my students' 9-digit numbers, so it's important to have a question asking their name. And then we can actually create this as a quiz. So what will happen is it only works for 3 types of questions: multiple choice, check boxes, and drop down. In terms of a short answer question or a paragraph question, Google Form isn't advanced enough yet to be able to evaluate a paragraph and determine that's the right answer, that's the wrong answer, that's 10 out of 30, that's 20 out of 30, but it can work with these 3: multiple choice, check boxes, and drop down. What you need to do is create an answer key where you select which answer is the right one, and once you click on it, there's a check mark, and then you can determine how many points per question. So I might have 10 questions on my quizzes, and so they're 5 points each for a particular question. When I'm creating the Google form initially, I'll show you how that works. I go to New, I go to More. For those people who love websites, now Google Sites is here. That's relatively new, but we're not talking about that right now. So I'm going to go up to Google Forms and click on it. And the first thing that I usually do is name it, because if you don't, sometimes all your work disappears and then you get really sad. I'm just going to call it Web Tools. And then usually what I do, because I don't know, I enjoy it, is I choose what the image is going to be at the top. I'm not happy with just a solid color, So there's tons of images. They're organized by different topics and themes. So I'm going to pick one. Hopefully I'll pick one. We'll just go with that. Okay. So what I want to do is, if I want to make this a quiz, is I go to this little wheel up here, which is settings. And in terms of general, I can collect their email addresses. Usually I do. If I only want them to do the quiz once, I can limit it. If I want them to edit, which usually we don't in a quiz, but you can click on those boxes. Presentation, there's a progress bar which shows up at the bottom. I can shuffle or randomize the question order, which I don't usually do because I have a specific order for my questions. I can show a link to submit another response if I want to give them multiple attempts at it. And this is where I write, some sort of message at the end when they're done. But this is what's new. On the right-hand side is this quiz feature. So you have to click this button on, and then I have a choice. Do I want them to be able to get their results immediately? I leave it immediately after each submission. Or am I going to review it as a class first and then let them see their results? So then we might go with later. I usually go with immediately, and we click Save. One other feature with Google Form, which I think is really cool, is I can actually get a pre-filled link. And what that does is, if I click on this, I can fill in an answer key to my quiz, and when I click Submit, so if the correct answer was option 1, and I click Submit, it automatically has generated this answer key, which I can put somewhere when I want to share it with the students so they can check their work, their answers against the correct answers, etc. So that's called a pre-filled link. Yeah. I'll let you go there. That was pretty cool. I haven't seen the new thing, so that was pretty cool. Deanna has a question that sort of relates directly to this. The idea of if you're doing stuff for assessment, how do you make sure the student who says they're doing it is who they're doing it? And I'm suspecting it's different if you're using the Google form. If you're a Google board, you can collect your email address. But what about some of these other assessment tools? How do you sort of address that, I guess, academic integrity a bit when you use some of these things? Yeah, I think there's different tasks that we do in classes, and I think whether I'm handing out 20 journal books or whether they're graphing in graph paper or whatever, there's different ways that I have to check in terms of them using the tools. So what will happen is, for this particular tool, I will literally go to the response page, and I walk around, and I can see as kids click their responses, and because the first one at the top says, "What's your name?" I immediately can see, oh, these 5 students have done it. In my class of 8, it's easy. These 3 students obviously still haven't done the work. In my class of 30, it would obviously be harder. But what I can do then is check against those names, and it happens with every single activity that I do. 28 kids do it. 2 kids did not. 29 kids did it. 1 kid did not. And sometimes there's a reason. Sometimes they refuse to do the work. Sometimes, 1 kid had a concussion last week and couldn't use their computer. And so I have to check against my students in the class versus those that completed the task. So even with Padlet, when I use Padlet, I will get the students to actually put their name, and they only get credit for the work if their name's attached. Even if they did amazing work, they only get credit for it if their name's attached. So I think there's different strategies that you can use, and you're always going to have that challenge, but you have to hold them accountable in terms of doing the work. And I have had students with Google Classroom, for example, not do multiple tasks, and so there's conversation at home. Right. Matt is not doing his work. Unfortunately, he's not going to be prepared for the final assignment.
No, that's okay. I know you can't see the chat because you're in the sharing here. Deanna's asking a couple of questions, like, what about the old, if Matt didn't do his work, but he gave his password to someone else and someone else did it for him, and you thought it was Matt? How do you kind of deal with some of those things?
Right. So what happens in grade 9, and it's happening with my kids right now. My kid did a poster this weekend on the same thing, is the idea of netiquette. And I've definitely had students, even with all our Google tools, where we've got multiple kids in the same document working on a slideshow together, and somebody put something inappropriate on a slide. And sometimes it's even inappropriate and it's directed at another group member. And it has their name attached to it. And you confront the student, and of course, in some cases they'll say, I went to my locker and Johnny or Steve beside me, used my computer. And so you have to address that, and depending on the severity of it, the principal, the parents get involved as well. But in terms of, I'm responsible for anything with my name on it, right? Whether I wrote it or not. And it's the same thing for me as it is for the students. Okay. Well, I just carry on. It's 2 minutes to 9, so maybe we can start to wrap it up there, buddy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's definitely some things we're not going to get to, and that's okay. So in terms of those tools, we talked a little bit about Google Forms and TED Ed lessons. I think the last thing that people want to consider, and it's maybe the most important thing, is what's going to be your online home for your teaching. So we've got kind of multiple options here on the left. They call them learning management systems. So at our board, we've used Moodle at the secondary level a lot, and now people are migrating to Google Classroom. And then we have this other class of tools on the right, which I would call them classroom management or behavioral management tools. They're not meant for sharing resources. They're not meant for submitting assignments. They are meant for rewarding and penalizing behavior in class. So Classcraft is actually a fantasy version in terms of you have students choosing different characters that they're going to be. So they could be a healer or a mage or a warrior. And so in my myth unit next week, that's what they'll do. They create an avatar, and it's amazing. They love it, and you can actually see, if I go a little bit further down, what it looks like. Sorry, one more slide. So this is the avatar of one of my kids, and they create their little, in some cases you might create their groups, and sometimes they create their groups, and then we've got multiple people here at the bottom in the same group. So these are awesome tools that you can use in terms of behavioral management. So I would need to use something else like Google Classroom for my actual assignments and for the materials they're going to interact with. So I think we are almost out of time. I can take any final questions if people have them. One thing we want to do is make sure we share the link to this so that you can explore some of these tools. I know there was a lot of tools in a short amount of time. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go back to the main area here. So I think we're back there. So hopefully everybody can see the thank you slide. You've got Derek's email address there as well, his Twitter handle. A little overwhelming, absolutely, Andrew. There's so many things out there. I thought I was pretty tuned in with things, but I learned a bunch of stuff here as well tonight. Every time you get a bunch of new things together, you're going to find something new that you haven't used. So there's lots for me to dig into as well here. So thanks again, Derek, for that, as the thank yous come in from everybody. So just before we wrap up, I know it is 9 o'clock here. I'm just going to pop ahead just to remind you, and if you've done this, if you've been on a session before, you know this. When you log out, you're going to get a link that pops up in your browser to a feedback survey. I put the link here as well. Please take a few minutes and give that feedback to us and to OTF. Derek will get some of that as well, so it really helps in future planning, what people liked and how to tailor it for what everybody wants. So when you log out, you'll get that link there as well. Just real quick to wrap up, there is some stuff coming up still before Christmas. There's a few things the rest of this week and next week, and a few the week after that before they take a Christmas break. You will get a link in your email probably tomorrow to the resource page, which will have All of these links to all of the different things, including the full Google Slides that Derek used as well, with all of the links you saw in there. So you'll get absolutely everything sent to you tomorrow in an email. So you'll have lots to spend time exploring as you go through. Just a couple things. I know this financial literacy conference is just this weekend. It's sold out, but there is a financial literacy webinar next week. I just thought I'd make mention of that as well. OTF is always putting on lots of different things. And then last but not least, you can follow OTF on the various social media bits and pieces, Twitter and Facebook and videos on YouTube. But you guys know that because you found the webinars and you're here learning with everybody tonight. So I'm going to pop back just if that link doesn't work. There we go. As you sign out, you can fill out the feedback form. So once again, thanks very much. I'm going to stop the recording here in a second, and then we can take any last minute questions once we do that. So thanks everybody, and thanks Derek for a really cool webinar.